It's time for Herd Mentality, the weekly episode where you control the discussion today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Well, folks, welcome in. Time for a little herd mentality. Unfortunately, we weren't able to work it in last week because it was a short, condensed week. Something had to bump from our normal routine, but we're back into herd mentality right now. First one today comes from Jeff, and Jeff says, I was wondering, with Terrel Bernard out for a month and Matt Milano out until December, what is your assessment of Baylon Spector and Dorian Williams filling those roles going forward, and why do you think Spector specifically can or can't fill in for Bernard? What does the tape show? I know it's a small sample size. So let's talk about it. Of course, Terrel Bernard got injured early against Miami. Pectoral strain, is going to miss about a month. And so looking at the upcoming games on the Bills schedule, next up is a home date, Monday Night Football against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Then 3 in a row on the road. At Baltimore, at Houston, at the Jets. And then the 5th game would be home against Tennessee. So hopefully Bernard's back for that Tennessee game at the latest. Tough stretch. And that's the schedule this year. There's nowhere to hide. That's what I keep going back to with this path for the Bills. Good opponents seemingly every week and no real lulls in terms of the competition level. And, 4 huge AFC games in a row here. Jags, Ravens, Texans, Jets. So that's the upcoming slate. Now, we're going to find out soon if the Bills have plans to put Terrel Bernard on injured reserve. If he is on injured reserve, that means he'll miss a minimum of 4 games, and then the Bills can open up his window to return. And so the question is, where do the Bills go from here? I think what's interesting is that the Bills have had 2 inactive linebackers every week to this point. Edefwan Ulofoshio and Joe Andreessen. So the Bills have 6 linebackers on the active roster, and they're dressing 4 on game day, and there's no linebackers on the practice squad. Now, I would guess one of Ulofoshio and Andreessen will be active moving forward, and my suspicion is that Andreessen will be the active player because we know he's trained to play Mike linebacker. And Terrel Bernard, Mike linebacker, you want to make sure that you have players that can step into that role, especially because it's a green dot position. And so if it came down to it, you'd want somebody that can do that. Now, we know Baylon Spector is the backup middle linebacker. Then you get to Nicholas Moreau as the 3rd string. And so it would take a little time for Joe Andreessen to be called upon, but I think you'd want that guy to be active. Now, I think in terms of roster moves, if Terrel Bernard goes on injured reserve, I would assume they'd call somebody up from the practice squad. They would elevate somebody to the practice squad and then maybe sign Deion Jones to the practice squad, who is a veteran linebacker that spent the offseason with the Bills, didn't make the active roster, and that could be an option. Now, maybe they would just sign Deion Jones to the active roster. Not sure. But I think that would be kind of the path there. Now, Brandon Beane has come out and said that the first player that was off the team when they had to get down to 53, like the 54th player, he said that was Will Clapp. And Will Clapp, what he does is if he's available on the active roster, they don't really have to worry as much about their contingency plan for the jumbo tight end role that Alec Anderson fills. And I'm not sure if they're ready for Cedric Van Pran-Granger to be a every game active player. And so Will Clapp gives you some flexibility with how you manage that piece of your game day roster equation. But I do think that Baylon Spector represents the Bills' best option at middle linebacker right now. I think him and Dorian Williams are the best options. And what excites me about those two players is that they bring a very appealing blend of size and athleticism. They're bigger players. They're both over 230 pounds. They're both 6'1". So Baylon Spector, 6'1", 233, RAS score of a 913. A perfect score is a 10. Dorian Williams, 6'1", 230 pounds, RAS score of an 881. His 40-yard dash time is a 4.49. Very explosive player. Now, his jumps weren't that good. That's why his RAS score is under 9, but still a very high score. Point being, 230 pounds, runs 4.49. You got two guys with a lot of size and athleticism. And as for Baylon Spector specifically, I think you watch that Miami tape and you come away pretty happy. I don't think it was perfect, but man, to come in a tough spot like that against a unique opponent like Miami and be as impactful as he was, that was impressive. Thought his confidence processing the run and playing downhill, making tackles was really good. Now, none of these players are as good as Terrel Bernard or Matt Milano in coverage, and I feel like that's where you get the biggest drop-off. That ability to feel routes, to squeeze, to read the backfield, to work in the throwing lanes. Terrel Bernard and Matt Milano have the potential to be one of the best pairs of coverage linebackers in the NFL, and so that's where I feel like you have the biggest drop-off. And that's something that the Bills will have to scheme around and figure out. Now, part of that equation's been bringing in a dime safety. I'm sure they'll continue doing that with Jamarcus Ingram on long and late downs. But I think what's really important for a Baylon Spector in particular is that he has been knocking on the door. Now, availability's been the issue for Baylon Spector. But even last year, when the Bills wanted to play three linebackers situationally, he was that guy. We know that he's gotten first-team reps at least occasionally during training camp to run as a middle linebacker. So he's been knocking on the door. I think he's played well. The concern with Spector has been availability, just been injured a lot. And injured a lot for a guy that really hasn't played a lot. It's not a great combination. But you watch this guy play at Clemson, you know he can play. You've watched him play in preseason. You've seen some flashes during regular season games. You know he can play. You just got to stay on the field. So I think that's the big part of the equation. But this is a monumental opportunity for him in his career. And that's been a great thing for other Bills players to this point. When they get that opportunity, what do they do with it? You've seen some very impressive results from that. Look at Tyrell Dodson last year. Depth linebacker for a number of seasons. Finally gets a chance to play. Plays well. Parlays that into a decent contract as a starter for the Seattle Seahawks. You've seen other examples of that. Dane Jackson getting paid like a starter in Carolina. So this is Baylon Spector's opportunity. And what matters a lot, I think, with Baylon Spector, in addition to some of these other seemingly out of nowhere players coming in and contributing to this defense, has been their time in the system. That matters a ton. You have a foundational knowledge of what the defense is trying to accomplish. And so when you have that, and you're confident in what the defense is asking you to do, and it's your opportunity to contribute, you've seen some good results. But think about these guys. This is year 3 for Baylon Spector. For Jamarcus Ingram, this is also year 3. You've seen what he's been able to do through 2 games. For Cam Lewis, year 6, hasn't played a ton, but has been around year 6. Damar Hamlin, his 4th season. Guys kind of stepping in, but at the root of it, they've been around. And obviously they've been trained well to come in and help. Like I mentioned with Baylon Spector, I'm very encouraged that he fared so well against a unique offense like Miami, really unique with how they block the run. I mean, very different type of stuff. An offense that in so many ways I think is designed to stress the second level of a defense, and Baylon Spector met the moment. I think Dorian Williams has played his best football the last 2 weeks, and you could tell things are slowing down from him. It's no longer a guy out there that looks like a dog chasing cars, no longer drinking through a fire hose. It's slowing down a little bit, and he's able to be not only more impactful, but less of a liability. That's the thing. You watched him last year, and you're like, man, these offenses know he's rough. They're going after him, and he's killing the team. I don't feel that way right now watching Dorian Williams. So I think there's a lot of encouraging dynamics there. But I'd say to bring this piece of this conversation to a close, path forward, no Bernard. You're leaning into Spector and Williams. Obviously, no Taron Johnson, no Matt Milano. The key is the defensive line. It goes back to that defensive line. If they can win up front, they can reset the line of scrimmage. If they can wreak havoc against the run and create negative plays, if they can get after the quarterback, that sets a foundation for everything else that happens with this defense. So as the Bills continue to have attrition with their back seven, their defensive line has been healthy, and that's the group that has to set the tone for this defense to play winning football moving forward without so many key players. All right, folks, wanted to spend some time on that piece of the conversation, but plenty more coming up on the other side of it, including some Josh Allen discussion and Von Miller and what his contract incentives are and how that's all shaping up. Be sure to stick with me. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports platform with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is also the only real daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your guys gets hurt. PrizePicks also puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get money in as quick as 15 minutes. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Folks, game days around my house are very busy. We had 2 young kids. I got to watch the games, be dialed in. My wife's obviously got to deal with a lot with the young children and, running the household. I'm very thankful for DoorDash. DoorDash really helps us out. DoorDash is a food delivery app that brings food right to my front door from my favorite local restaurants, my favorite national restaurants. Just go on the app. They'll bring dinner right to the house. Saves us a ton of time. And, actually, I kid you not, literally yesterday, I'm watching the games, right? And all of a sudden, the battery in one of the smoke detectors in my house, it goes off, right? And so it's chirping left and right, telling me that I need to change the battery. And you think I got a 9-volt battery sitting in the drawer? Of course I don't. Well, you know who does? CVS. And so I go to DoorDash, I order a pack of 9-volt batteries to my house. I was able to replace the battery in the smoke detector and, didn't have to leave my house. That's so convenient. The convenience is unmatched. So check it out. Use promo code LOCKEDFALL24 for 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. Limited time offer. Terms apply. Promo is not valid for orders containing alcohol. DoorDash, your door to game day greatness, your door to more. Download the DoorDash app now to order your game day favorites. Must be 21 or older to order alcohol. Drink responsibly. Alcohol available only in select markets. All right, folks. Next one is from Harwood, who says, this whole offseason, we've heard all about everybody eats in this offense. And though the sample size is small, the results through 2 games have been strikingly positive. It feels though 17 has been mechanically crisp, really cerebral from the quarterback position, and mixing in the special stuff when needed. Would you agree with this? And would you say we are potentially seeing the next evolution of Josh Allen as a player? Also, with an offense that appears to finally have yards after catch ability, do you think we could be in store for Josh Allen's most efficient season as a passer? It's a good question. And kind of talked a little bit about this in the All-22 review that I dropped on Saturday coming out of the Dolphins game. And I would agree that Josh Allen is playing really clean football. I'm enjoying him a ton. I love his decision-making and how he sees the field. And look, decision-making is not always interceptions, right? Obviously, he hasn't thrown an interception to this point, but I mean, decision-making in terms of how he's working progressions, what he's saying yes to in terms of routes that he's choosing to target, what he's saying no to, picking his spots with the vertical stuff. I think Josh Allen's approach and how he's executing the quarterback position is really, really strong. There's a level of comfort that you're seeing in terms of how he's manipulating defenses with his eyes, what he's understanding with pre-snap recognition and how the coverage rotation is going to be and where the space is going to be and where to go with the football. I think he's doing it at a high level. It's very mature quarterback play. Very mature. There's a comfort that he has executing this that is exciting for me. And like you mentioned in the question, he's sprinkling in that off-script stuff effectively. Now, he had to do it a little bit more against Arizona, knew to reel it back against Miami. I like how he's picking his spots. His pocket management has been very good, and the Bills have been giving him mostly five-man protections. And so there are times where he has to account for free runners. There are times where he has to just understand where there's some overload stuff and where to move within the pocket, doing that at a high level. You mentioned yards after catch per reception. That's looking pretty good. Right now, that's at 6.9 yards after catch per reception. There's been seasons for Josh Allen where that's been 4.5, 4.3. And that speaks to some level of the yards after catch talent, but also Josh Allen's ball placement, Josh Allen in terms of processing and making quicker decisions to give guys chances to be productive after the catch. And while the numbers haven't been gaudy, in particular against Miami, I mean, 20 dropbacks, 13 of 19, right? You're not going to have this huge menu of productive plays that you can point to, but as you watch the tape and you see the route distribution and what's on the menu for Josh Allen, I'm encouraged by what's there, and I'm encouraged by what's to come, especially some of the vertical stuff. They've gotten to some good looks with the vertical stuff, and I think they're really close on a lot of that. And that's very encouraging, all things considered, with all the new players, not really a ton of time in preseason, all of that. So I think, to your point, this is in so many ways the evolution of Josh Allen. You're seeing mature quarterback play that is both dynamic and facilitates the offense. He's doing a good job of threading that needle, and I like where this is headed. So very encouraged by Josh Allen to this point. Mike says, could you please review Von Miller's contract restructure and how the incentives that it seems like he has a good chance to reach are going to affect the salary cap for this year and next? It's a good question, right? Von Miller, one of the great storylines early in the season, played really good football through the first two games of the season. Really good ball. And so to kind of recap what happened here, Von Miller took a reduced salary in 2024, and that came with the opportunity for him to actually make $2.5 million more if he reaches certain incentives. So his max that he could earn this year was $17.5 million. The incentives take that to $20 million. And so the trade-off was the Bills gained a lot of cap space. I think almost $9 million, like 8.5 or so is what the Bills were able to get in 2024 cap space. Now, I'm going to tell you the incentives, but keep this in mind. Any incentive that he reaches is expensed against the 2025 cap. So nothing will change this year. This would all be expensed against next year's cap, regardless if the Bills keep Von Miller or not. So here's the incentives. And he's already reached the first one. If he gets 2 sacks, he gets $1 million. All right? So he's at that first one. And if he gets 4 sacks, now this is non-cumulative. So if he gets 4 sacks, he gets $2.5 million. If he gets 6 sacks, he gets $4 million. 8 sacks, he gets $6 million. 10.5, he gets $8.645 million. 15 sacks, he gets $9.645 million. Now, there's also incentive in terms of the playoffs. So he gets an additional $1.5 million if he gets 12 sacks and the Bills win the AFC. And the caveat there is Von Miller must play at least 30% of the snaps in the AFC Championship game. So he's on his way, right? This was the whole thing. Hey, I'll take less money. We'll save cap space right now. But if I go out and do all these things, I'm going to get all my money back plus a little bit more. And then the win for the Bills is, okay, do that. We'd love for you to reach all these incentives, and it will count against next year's salary cap. That's what's going on there. Now, the Bills, of course, if they choose to move on from Von Miller after this season, we'll see. Maybe we won't want that. Maybe Von Miller's going to keep this up all season, and we're going to say, keep that guy around, which would be a great shift in how the narrative has been to this point. So if the Bills cut Von Miller after the season and designate it as a pre-June 1st cut, the Bills would get $15.4 million in dead cap space, and they get $8.5 million in cap savings. If they designate it as a post-6-1 cut like they did with Tre'Davious White, they get $17.5 million in cap savings, but then you spread the dead cap across 2 seasons. You'd have $6.4 million in 2025. You'd have $9 million in 2026. And so do you want to just flush it and be done with it, or do you want to post-June 1 it and then get more immediate relief, but then you have dead cap the next 2 seasons from the deal? So there's things to sort out, including the possibility that Von Miller is happily a Buffalo Bill in 2025. And the fact that we're even thinking about that right now is actually pretty cool. All right, folks, coming up on the other side of it, we got to talk about the idea of extending Rasul Douglas, some comments on the interior offensive line injuries, Jordan Poyer. Folks, be sure to stick with me. Purchasing tickets for events can be stressful, but it doesn't have to be. And it isn't if you have the Game Time app. Game Time is the fast and easy way to purchase tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. The app is awesome. It's easy to navigate. They give you flash deals. They give you a seat view. They give you all-in prices. You can turn on the feature to look at the prices as all-in. Plus, they specialize in last-minute tickets. Maybe you don't know if you can go to the Bison's game on Thursday or the Sabres game in October, right? But the cool thing about Game Time is you can make that choice right up until the day of the event, and they have great deals on last-minute tickets. So check it out. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, folks, the next one here comes from Steven. Steven says, what chance do you think the Bills have at retaining Rasul Douglas? If him and Christian Benford keep rocking all year, the Bills got to consider that, right? Steven, I think about this a lot. I really do. This is probably one of the more challenging offseason decisions for Brandon Beane coming up after the season. Rasul's a great player, really good football player. Turned 30 in August, so that means next August he turns 31. And he's not the most athletic guy. You know, even when he was coming out, you know, runs like a 4.6. And so that doesn't age well, especially at the corner position. But he is a great fit for this defense, a zone-heavy defense. His tackling skills takes away the football. He's a stud. And so I think the complicating factors are his age, his athletic profile, and then, well, Kaiir Elam. You know, if you're going to have a chance to give Kaiir Elam a chance to be a meaningful player for you, he's got to play at some point. And I'm not saying if Rasul's the best option, like he's the best option. But if you feel like you need to give this guy a chance, Kaiir Elam, to consider if that's going to be your long-term answer, like maybe that's your pathway to do it. And you ask yourself, well, aging, he'll be 31 next year at the start of the season. You know, you want to be a year early on moving on from players and not a year late, especially at corner. So it's complicated for sure. I think you probably take it year to year. I think you might put a guy like Rasul Douglas on the Stephon Gilmore plan, where he just 1 year at a time. You know, he signed 1 year, $10 million with the Colts, 1 year, $10 million with Dallas. Right now, 1 year, $7 million with the Vikings. Is that kind of how you approach a Rasul Douglas? Now, you got some void years already tacked onto his deal. He's got 3 years of void years. So maybe that factors into your decision-making there. But if I were to bring back Rasul Douglas, I think it would be something like, okay, 1 year, $8 million. I think that's how you have to approach it. I don't think you want to extend him long-term and really tie yourself up in a guy that is aging with a modest athletic profile to begin with when he's coming out of college. So complicated decision. I think the Bills have mostly been right about this stuff, though, on who they keep, who they move on from. And so this one will be challenging for Brandon Beane. And those are the layers that go into the decision. Andrew says, through 2 games, what is your assessment of the Bills' interior offensive line? It's a good question. I think that, first of all, the tackles, Spencer Brown, Dion Dawkins, playing at an elite level. They have been phenomenal. The interior guys, I think, is where you're looking for some growth moving forward. I would say O'Cyrus Torrence has been the weak link of this offensive line to this point. And it's not that he's getting beat one-on-one. I think it's timing, in particular in the zone rushing scheme where you saw some issues there. And then I think in pass protection, it's been the communication, trading off rushers and feeling stunts and getting to certain landmarks. I think that's where he's had some issues. Threatening some overloads, blocking down, that guy doesn't come, not being able to peel back out and get the free runner. You've seen the most issues come through him. I think David Edwards was really good against Arizona, was okay against Miami, and I think Connor McGovern's probably been okay through 2 games. But I feel like there's more for those guys in terms of higher levels of play that they can achieve. And I have a level of confidence there. I mean, it's for all 3 of them, they're playing next to new players. Like even O'Cyrus Torrence is the right guard, but he's now playing next to Connor McGovern, which also means Connor McGovern's playing next to somebody new. And then, of course, David Edwards on the other side. And David Edwards is new to Dion Dawkins and McGovern. So you'd expect that to be the piece of the offensive line that needs more time to come together. And I have a level of confidence that it will. The Bills have an outstanding offensive line coach in Aaron Cromer. But I feel like there is more for this interior group to achieve. Now, I think the encouragement, like I said, is they're not like they're getting beat up one-on-one. Timing and communication, that's all fixable stuff. Bob says, my question is whether the injuries to the linebackers and Taron Johnson, who kind of plays linebacker, is related to the plan to go with smaller but quicker linebackers. Not a criticism, but maybe a side effect. Or is it simply bad luck stuff happens? Yeah, I kind of lean into the bad luck stuff happens. I mean, Matt Milano got injured tackling a bag in practice. Taron Johnson, is trying to make a tackle. It's a completion over the middle of the field. Taylor Rapp's coming from the other way. Taron's got him wrapped up, and Rapp hits his forearm. It's unfortunate. Terrel Bernard's making a regular tackle against a running back, and his chest gets opened up. He gets a pectoral sprain. I mean, I think it's just stuff that happens. It's unfortunate. You hate, again, the concentration of injuries to like the same spots has been really crazy for the Bills, but I'm not sure there's anything that you can look at to try to find reasons other than these are big, strong, athletic football players playing a violent game and guys get injured, and that's what happened. Trevor says, do you think the Dolphins staff overestimated Poyer's knowledge of the offense since Joe Brady implemented his playbook this offseason? Felt like the Bills were able to keep it relatively simple and still dominated. Yeah, well, I mean, they dominated because they were the team that embraced the game script and Miami didn't. But no, I don't think anybody overestimated Poyer's knowledge or impact. You heard Sean McDermott, Tua Tagovailoa, and Mike McDaniel speak very openly about the advantage that it created. All of them. They weren't shy about it. Sean McDermott said, yeah, he's had the playbook for 7 years. It's going to be helpful. Tua saying, hey, yeah, picking his brain, learning how the Bills uniquely prepared for us compared to other teams and what some of their communication and checks are. All of that was very open. Now, I think, Trevor, with your question where maybe you're off course is that the benefit wasn't Poyer giving Miami knowledge of the Bills' offense. The benefit would be for Miami's offense learning about the Bills' defense and how the Bills game planned. But I think lost in all of these conversations, right? Because we always kind of get into this because players switch teams and there's always going to be some level of, hey, they got some secrets or they got some ideas that can help the team that they used to play for. There's still a game to be played. So I can sit here and tell you all this stuff, but at some point the ball is snapped and you got to execute. And if in that moment you can take knowledge that's been given to you that you never knew before and you can apply it and it can help you, good for you. But you still got to execute. And it's great if Jordan Poyer knows something, but it doesn't matter if Tua doesn't know it and can't apply it in the moment, or his weapons or whatever, right? Like there's still a game to be played, which I think we always have to remember in those types of circumstances. And that's, coming up against Jacksonville, it's Mitch Morse and Gabe Davis. You get Houston, they got Stephon Diggs and Tim Settle, right? Like this is just kind of what's going on. And both teams are aware of it, but there's, again, still a game to be played. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the podcast. Tomorrow, Bruce Nolan's joining the podcast. Him and I are going to talk about some of our early impressions, both on the offensive and defensive side of the football. So don't miss that. Of course, we're getting ready for the Jaguars starting later in the week. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.